Hi, this is Rob Polenic of Brutal Iron Gym. In today's video, I want to take you through how I would warm up for and go through multiple working sets of an exercise. So I'm going to do standing lateral raises, and I'm aiming for 3 sets of 10 to 14 reps. What I want to start with is a submaximal weight that I would use to get a feel for the movement pattern, figure out my position, and how that movement is going to feel for the day. So I've been lifting weights since I was 15 years old. I'm 40 now. So it's been 25 years, and I've done a lot of lateral raises in 25 years, but my body feels a little different every day I come into the gym. So some days I'm gonna feel better having a little bit of forward lean. Maybe my hands are coming out to the side, but they're a little bit in front of my body. And that helps me on that day best isolate the middle shoulder muscle, which is what lateral raises are for. Maybe another day I feel like sitting more upright and bringing my arms straight out to the side. So you can see here that they're more straight to my side. Maybe it feels better that way that day. Maybe I have a weird kind of shoulder thing that's bugging me. So maybe I'll come a little bit more forward of my body so you can see this angle. And that's what I need to do that day to still get the stimulus in, to still target the middle shoulder, but just changing the position around is very helpful, and it's common and okay to do, within the realm of still targeting the target muscle. So as long as I'm still using my middle shoulder muscle. But I like using the warm-up sets to get a feel for what technique, what position I want to use in my working sets. So for me, if I'm doing a set of 10 to 14 reps, I know I'm probably going to be in the ballpark of 30 to 40 pounds. So I would start with something submaximal. It doesn't have to be, like 50% or a certain percentage. I just want to start with something light. So I'm going to grab the 15s here. And for this, what I would do is I'm not looking to take this to a max effort. If my goal is 10 to 14 reps, I typically will aim for, in my warm-up sets, on the lower end of the range. So I wouldn't do 14, I'd do 10. Sometimes I just do even less than that, maybe like 5 to 10 reps. The idea is just to find the position for that day. So we'll go ahead and go through the first warm-up set. So right there, I'm already feeling that pretty good. So I think that was rep 3. There's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Good. So that would be the first warm-up set. It might seem odd or kind of quick, easy, simple, but that was enough. By rep 3, I could find where I wanted to position myself for the day, so I know that's going to feel better. Now, if I went from 15 all the way up to 30 to 40, could I do that? Absolutely. Will I probably annoy something? Yes. So doing more gradual jumps in your warm-ups allows you to get a little more fluid into the muscles and associated joints. It can reduce some of the inflammation and annoyance that the main working sets might cause. So I don't want to, and I typically wouldn't go right from like a submaximal weight, like 50%, all the way to what I think I'm going to work. I like high volume training. You don't have to do it this way. So if I do 15s, I'd probably do the 20s and the 25s. Try the 30s. If they weren't heavy enough to count as a working set, I'd then do the 35s. Maybe I settle on the 40s. That's a lot of sets. You'd have 15s, 20, 25, 30, 35 possibly before I would get to my 40-pound dumbbells. So I might have 5 warm-up sets. I don't mind that. I actually like that. It helps me feel kind of more warmed up, more primed, more ready for the workout. However, if you don't want to do all that work, maybe you don't have the time or you don't find it beneficial, you can chop that down, maybe just do 2 warm-up sets. So instead of doing the 20s, maybe I'll jump to the 25s and I'll give that a try. So again, this is gonna be sub-maximal. Maybe I'll, surprise myself, have a bad day and this turns into a working set. But I typically would assume this is gonna be sub-maximal. So I'll aim for the bottom of that rep range, the 10 reps. Okay, so that turned out how I thought it would. Is that had definitely heavier weight load than the 15s, but it wasn't maximal. Now for me, I know the lateral raises, that probably 30 to 40 is my range. If you're uncertain, you just take a big fat guess, you start light and work your way up. What's nice is for my clients, I write their programs to rotate every 4 weeks. So we would know, okay, if this is week 1, I don't know what my weight is yet. I'm gonna play around in week 1, try to find the right weight. But then in weeks 2, 3, and 4, I already know what the right weight was. So maybe week 1, last week I used 35-pound dumbbells. So I would know that that would be my guesstimate of what my first working set may be. So then I can kind of judge what my warm-up sets will be. So I'll give myself a little chance to breathe. So doing this and then trying to talk is a little rough. That's sad. I'm already out of breath in 2. But that's just the way it is. So now what I'll do is, basing on the 25s, they didn't feel like so hard that I think the 30s will be a challenge at 14. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump to the 35s. And I'm going to assume that this is probably gonna be in the working set range of 10 to 14. If I get to 10 and I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna overshoot 14, I'll just stop. If I get to 10 and I'm like, oh, this might actually be pretty miserable before 14, then I'll just go ahead and do whatever I can. Maybe I get 13, maybe I get 14. So this is a set where I would judge this one while I'm doing it. Maybe it's a warm-up set, maybe it becomes a working set. We'll have to see. Okay, so let me go ahead and do this one. Okay. Ooh, okay, so I knew at around rep 7 that this was going to be heavy enough to start to have some challenge by 14. Then at rep 12, I don't know if you could tell or not, but I tried to slow down my eccentric, my lowering portion a little bit. Try to do the same on rep 13. So that way by rep 14, it was definitely a challenge. So I would typically call that a working set. It doesn't mean that that's the heaviest I'm going to go. So typically in a movement like this, I'll give myself like 2 minutes rest. I'll probably be talking the whole way through that rest. But the idea here is that was heavy enough to make my muscles feel uncomfortable. So I would go ahead and count that as 1. Now, if these were muscles that were stubborn to grow, or I was doing a low volume program, meaning that maybe I was only getting maybe 10 to 12 working sets for shoulders all week, to me that's a low volume program. Typically the appropriate total working set range for a week is roughly 10 to 20. Now there are some people that'll do a little less, some people that'll do a little more, but if you're looking at muscle growth, 10 to 20 working sets per muscle group. So for the shoulders in general, you'd look for 10 to 20 working sets. If I'm only doing 10 or 12, that's a low volume program. I might not count that because I really want to make sure my 10 to 12 working sets are miserable. If I'm doing a higher volume program, maybe 16 to 20 working sets in a week, I'll go ahead and count that. But then let's say in weeks 3 and 4, I'm struggling to get some growth. Maybe, in 2 or 3 months, I'm like, damn, my shoulders really aren't growing. Then I would be more strict about that and call that maybe just a warm up. So really a lot of this stuff has like a live and learn kind of thing, like an evolution to it. So you kind of are taking your best guess every workout. You get more educated than your guesses, but it's still like a best guess along the way. So for me, I'd go ahead and count that as 1. I've talked probably long enough. So now I'm gonna go ahead and move up to the 40s because I know if my range is 10 to 14, I just got 14. The likelihood of me being able to do the 35s again for 14 is pretty high because that was challenging, but it didn't destroy me. So I'm likely going to come back and be able to do that again. So if I'm only got 2 more working sets, I want to make sure they're miserable. I'll go ahead and push this one up in weight, go to the 40s. If I get 10, 11, lower in the range, great. Maybe I only get 9, and I'll be like, oh crap, okay. Little on the low end, but that made up for being a little on the lighter end in the first one. So then maybe I'll drop back to the 35s and try something in the middle on the third set. But it's okay and it's appropriate to change the weight load that you use from working set to working set, as long as you're staying within the ballpark of the rep range. So all the programs I write for my clients, unless they're a strength-based athlete and we have to do specific weights for specific reps, they're going to typically have rep ranges, say 10 to 14. So if they go, 9 to 15, somewhere in there, you're totally fine. So I'll quit yapping and I'll give the 40s a try. Whoop, make sure I've got 2 40s. Okay, there we go. Ooh, okay. So this is stuff I typically do that I don't think ahead of time. But I got 12, and then I had that little mini pause to get a 13th. And the reason why was the first 12 felt pretty good. So, if I'm already here, I'm already in the misery, I'm still within my range, I want to go ahead and get that little extra emphasis. So for me, I would count that as a 12 plus 1. And then I would just write like a bounce, like where I came down from the 12th, did a little bit of like a body English bounce. The part of the reason why that's actually okay as well is in a movement like this, you're getting muscle damage during the contraction, the raising portion, but that's actually not where you're getting the bulk of the benefit. The bulk of the benefit on lateral raises is on the way down. When you're trying to resist that weight from falling, what's happening is the muscles of your shoulders, when you're at the top, they're contracted and shortened, and then they're trying really hard to slowly release themselves against that pressure. That causes an enormous amount of mechanical damage, muscle stress. So that's actually the most stressful part of this movement, isn't the contraction, it's trying to resist the lowering portion, the eccentric portion. So on that 12th one, I got it there, and I was like, nah, I want a little extra. So I might use some body English to get the dumbbell up, but I'm still in my middle delt. Like I haven't shrugged it, I haven't changed, what muscle's working. I stayed in the middle shoulder, and then I'm gonna control that eccentric. There would be no point in me doing the 13th if I just threw it up and dropped it. It's useless. So there, I was able to get it to the top and then resist the way down. So again, I'll call that 12 plus 1. Make a little note that I use like some body English or a bounce or something. Now that is 2 working sets, 2. So in my mind, I made up for if the first one would be considered questionable as a working set, adding that extra little rep on the second working set made sure that I kind of balanced that out. So now going into the third working set, I can kind of pick and choose. If I went back to the 35s, I run the risk of maybe end up doing, 14 again. Now, am I a little more fatigued? Yes. Am I so fatigued that I don't think I could do the 35s for 14? Nah, I probably could. So my other option is to stay at 40s, and I know I just got 12 plus 1, so the likelihood of me being able to do at least 10 is very high. The likelihood of me being able to do over 14, 0. So that makes for a much better decision. There you go. Is the 40s, I know for sure I'm gonna hit the minimum. I know for sure I'm not gonna go over the max. Whereas the 35s, I'd be a little uncertain if I'd go over the max. So I'm gonna go ahead and stay with the 40s. So you'll see in my working sets, I did 35s, then 40, then 40. Sometimes that happens. Maybe I overshot on the first set and I really wanted to be aggressive this day and I wanted to push my limits. Maybe I tried the 45s and I barely got 9. Then I would go 40s and then 40s or maybe even down to 35s. So again, the weight can change from working set to working set. Sometimes it'll start heavy and go light. Sometimes you start a little bit lighter and then you realize, get a little more intensity, get a little more excitement, and now you can push up a little bit. So it's okay if it goes either way, as long as what you're doing makes sense and is with the intent to keep good form and stay within the targeted rep range. So now I'll go ahead and try the 40s again, and this will be my third working set. Okay. Oh, there we did. Okay, perfect. So I ended up doing the 11 plus the 12. The 12th I barely resisted. So that would be 11 plus 1. And again, with that little bit of body English. So that is how I would manage the warm-ups. I did the 15s for the bottom end of the range. Did the 25s for the bottom end of the range. Then I kind of took a guess at what might be the right weight. So I tried the 35s, and that worked out okay. Like we said, it was maybe a smidge on the light side, but challenging enough that my muscles felt uncomfortable, so I counted it. I then did the 40s, and the 40s, you can see the first set of the 40s, I got the 12 plus 1. The second set of the 40s, I only got 11 plus 1. So I definitely had muscle fatigue across the 3 sets to where my performance was starting to decrease. If I was ever concerned and worried about that first set, I would just do another set and make sure I got the work in. I would much rather do one extra set and have no doubts that I stressed the muscle well enough than to call it quits here just because that's what's on the paper, but then wonder if I could have done better in the workout. So this is how I would manage warming up for a movement, and then how I would manage the working sets. So hopefully this was helpful. If you have any questions, put them in the comment section below. You can always reach out on our email at brutalirongym@gmail.com. Go to our website, which is www.brutalirongym.com. We have a contact us page. We also have a podcast. So I've done over 2,000 episodes. It's free and I do it every single day. And it covers nutrition, training, mindset, and listener Q&A. So hopefully that'll be a helpful resource as well. That's it. Thank you for watching.